From Microbe TV, this is Office Hours for Wednesday, September 3rd, 2025. I'm Vincent Racaniello, and welcome to your viral corner of the internet, where we give you real science, no lies, no disinformation, and you can ask us anything that you want. And speaking of asking anything, my guest tonight from Debunk the Funk, Dan Wilson. Welcome, Dan.
Hey, Vincent. Hey, everybody. Good to be back here. I'm happy to come back and answer questions. This is a really important forum for truth and science, especially today.
Yeah. Everybody, let me thank everybody for coming moderators tonight. We have Vanity Nutrition, Barb Mack. We have Les Fabi. And did I see anyone else? Thank you for moderating. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody else. Tom Steinberg, thank you for coming as well. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. And Dan is here, of course, to answer your questions. But first, before we get to Dan, I just wanted to point out two news items, which I'm sure Dan will have comment on. First of all, an interesting story. Governors in California, Oregon, and Washington have gotten together, and they're going to make vaccine recommendations independent of the institution formerly known as CDC, because it doesn't resemble the old CDC. I think that's great. New West Coast Health Alliance, it's going to be called. What do you think of that, Dan? Isn't that good?
Yeah. I mean, now that the CDC is being run by people who RFK Jr. put in charge, we know that nothing good is going to come from that. And so scientific societies and medical societies need to stand together and make their own recommendations and follow the evidence, because we know that those bodies are not going to do that anymore.
Be interesting to see which, if the states that do this, I mean, I think other states should do it as well. It would be interesting to see if they divide along party lines. I bet they will.
I think so. I mean, we're already starting to see that, right?
Yeah. Of course, the other thing that happened today is that the governor of Florida and his surgeon general have decided to end all vaccine mandates, including those for school children, which they don't seem to realize have really reduced infectious diseases among children for many, many, many years. And experts everywhere recognize this, but somehow Florida does not. What do you think about that, Dan?
I mean, it's not surprising given the history of the Florida Surgeon General, him going on anti-vaccine talk shows with Del Bigtree and saying the things he's said about COVID vaccines throughout the pandemic. Um, it's not surprising. I mean, he has said that COVID vaccines are not fit for human use. He tried to fabricate or omit data in a Florida Health Department report about COVID vaccines that made it look like they were more dangerous to teen boys than they actually were. Um, he's not evidence based in his standings and in his recommendations. And so now with this administration being what it is with RFK Jr., he stands to gain politically by aligning with them and doing away with evidence-based public health preventative measures. So
Yeah.
it's not surprising.
It's what I don't understand. I guess it happens. I mean, he got a MD and a PhD at Harvard.
Hmm. Hmm.
So presumably he saw evidence-based medicine and real science there, right? He got a PhD. And yet I just can't believe that he believes this. I mean, he said that COVID mRNA vaccines integrate into our DNA. That's why he didn't like them. I mean, just crazy,
Hmm.
ridiculous statement based on no evidence, right?
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not based on any evidence. I mean, he has said things like, "Oh, COVID mRNA vaccines, which uh, have residual DNA in them, which any biologic is going to have residual
Yeah,
impurities in them." He says that DNA is going to integrate into your genome somehow because lipid nanoparticles are part of the equation. No, that doesn't change. That doesn't change the fact that the DNA is fragmented in tiny pieces, and it's not going to, even in the cytosol, easily get into the nucleus and then even then easily integrate into your genome. It's just totally not science based. But um, you know, people get MDs or PhDs and aren't necessarily going to follow evidence. They're not necessarily going
yeah,
to use their credentials for good. And sometimes people make it through those programs and are, you know, for one reason or another, willing to support um, conspiracy theories and misinformation talking points, whether they actually believe it or whether they're doing it just to benefit themselves. Up for debate. But yeah, we you and I have seen people like that. So I don't know how
sure.
it happens. I don't understand it, but it's out there.
The problem is that because he's credentialed, people think he knows what he's talking about, right? Oh, I have a Harvard MD and a PhD. But as you say, it doesn't necessarily mean you know what you're talking about. And I just wonder how much of his posturing is politically driven, right?
Hmm.
Because we know that opposition to vaccines falls along party lines.
Yeah, I would bet he's highly politically motivated. I mean, we don't
Yeah.
know, but um, with Ron DeSantis having his track record in the COVID pandemic, and now this administration, um, he's taking advantage of the situation. Whether he intends to do is doing it intentionally or not, it's
Yeah.
benefiting him.
He said, quote, "Who am I to tell you what your child should put in their body? Your body is a gift from God." Perhaps he doesn't understand that we'd like to keep that gift healthy, and we know that good public health is the way to do it.
Yeah, and maybe he doesn't also understand his job description of Surgeon General, which is recommending what people should and should not put in their bodies based on evidence. That's what they're supposed to do. That's
Yeah.
what doctors do every day. They tell you, hey, you should take this or not take this in order to have your best shot at being healthy. I don't. It's crazy. But I noticed in that clip he almost said, "Your body, your choice," and then he stopped. He stopped himself because he realized, "Oh, oop, can't say that."
Doesn't work with nope, doesn't work. He did say this is going to infuriate a lot of people. Every last, he said, the administration is going to be working to end all vaccine mandates. Every last one of them is wrong and drips with disdain and slavery. Mm,
Listen, I mean, it makes me really upset to see a black man on a stage saying that slavery, which involved slavery in America, involved taking families apart from Africa, from West Africa mostly, putting them in cages with human waste up to their ankles, and before shipping them off in the very same conditions across the Atlantic to be owned and sold for generations by white owners who would rape them, whip them, kill them for no good reason. And then, even after slavery was abolished in America, you had little black children who could be killed for just whistling at a white woman. And he wants to compare evidence based public health preventative measures to that. It's it's ridiculous and it's beyond shameful. And the saddest thing is that getting rid of those mandates is going to impact the poorest communities the most. It's going to impact the communities that have the least access to healthcare the most. and those happen to be majority minorities in America. And so what he's doing is a disservice to the poorest class in America, because without those mandates, without those extra measures and health insurance backing to get kids vaccines, vaccination rates are going to drop. And even if those communities still choose to vaccinate in those poor communities, they're less protected because herd immunity is going to be weaker for these diseases that we know we have herd immunity for through vaccines. So at the end of the day, the most vulnerable people, the most impoverished people in our society are going to get hit hardest by this. And that's so disappointing for a privileged black man of today to be advocating for such a policy. So that's just my rant on that, because it really upsets me.
I'd love to see you and interview him.
Oh, I would love to interview Ladapo. Oh, that would be that'd be fun. It would be fun. We'll say that.
He would never do it because none of these people, RFK Jr., Bhattacharya, Prasad, none of them would go on your program
No, they
because
wouldn't.
they know what you do.
But I hope I haven't seen it. I want to see it. I want to see a reporter ask hard questions to RFK Jr. because, like, I see in a lot of interviews, I think it was Collins, a reporter, was asking him about his September announcement for the cause of autism.
Right.
And she was kind of, poking at him like, oh, so you're changing the day. It might not be September, it might be a few more months after that. And it's like, yeah, it's funny to poke at the fact that he's making such a ridiculous statement. But I'm just sitting there like, ask him about his view on HIV/AIDS. Like, ask him if he thinks the children in Samoa who died of measles should have been vaccinated. Ask him those questions. Like, there should be reporters willing to ask these questions that would unambiguously show how ridiculous and dangerous and stupid his viewpoints are. Because if he's forced to defend those, if he's forced to defend himself while answering those questions, I don't see how he does it. I don't see how he gets around a question of, oh, so, those kids in Samoa, you say you had nothing to do with the vaccination rates dropping, whatever. We can't, like, it's a dead end in that kind of interview if he says I had nothing to do with it.
Right.
But if you ask him, okay, well, those kids who died were unvaccinated, should they have been vaccinated? How does he answer that? He like he's not going to answer that correctly or honestly.
What's disappointing to me is that, Lex Friedman didn't get tough with him at all. Now, Rogan, I just forget it because he doesn't even know what to ask. But Friedman has some intelligence. I know because I was on his program, and he
Hmm.
didn't he didn't ask him anything useful, as you know.
Right. Yeah, and Friedman actually asked me what questions um, I should that he should ask to RFK Jr. and I gave suggestions, but he was really soft with. I think the only question that I suggested that he actually asked was the one that gets clipped a lot, which is, are there any vaccines that are good?
Yeah.
Like, is there any vaccine that's a safe vaccine? If he's pro safe vaccines, um, and that was a tough question, but Lex is pretty soft about it. So,
Yeah. He didn't follow up. That's the thing. When
hmm
you can't just read 10 questions, you have to follow up based on the answer, as you know. And Lex cannot do that. He cannot interview people from dozens of different fields and be an expert enough to do that. So that's why RFK and his ilk will never be on a program with you or me or Paul Offit because he would be revealed. Well, he's already revealed as the ignorant person that he is, but it would be even more so, unfortunately.
hmm
So you began your program, Debunk the Funk, originally to work on anti-vax issues, right? And then you got caught
Hmm.
up in COVID, which and now I
That's
think
right.
mostly you talk about COVID issues, right?
Most of the time, yeah, yeah. It was a coincidence, really. I remember I was talking to my friends about um, really actually starting a YouTube channel in December of 2019. um, 'Cause I remember I went home for Christmas and I was talking to my friends. I'm like, guys, I really just want to just do this. I'm getting to the end of my PhD. Um, I'm feeling like I haven't done enough with what I really like to do, which is science communication. And so I want to do this YouTube
Mm,
channel thing. And then, yeah, I started filming videos for it, I think in late December or early January of 2019, 2020. And I was familiar with the anti-vaccine crowd. So I was just like finding mostly stuff from Del Bigtree's show and just making these little videos with my terrible webcam and no lighting. um, and then then COVID started, and I kept making a video a week throughout most of the pandemic, and so yeah, that's how I started.
so I'm going to ask you a question that you asked Paul Offit right at the start. How are you?
Mm.
How are you doing?
I'm hanging in there. I'm hanging in there. I just said that I uploaded a video a week during most of the pandemic, and that has
Mm,
slowed down this year. Um, it's at first I was taking a break because I was really disheartened by just the fact that RFK Jr. was going to be head of HHS, and um, it just seemed
mm.
like an uphill. Like I've described it as like you're Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill, and then it rolls back all the way back down, and you're like, well, I guess I could start pushing it back up, but I need a break first. Um, so it started as that, but now I would love to be making more videos, but my kids are a lot right now. I have
Yeah.
I have a 4-year old and an almost 2-year old, and neither of them sleep. they I'm lucky if they're both asleep by 10 on any night. So, getting uninterrupted time after work
Mm.
to film is tough. But I see everything that's happening, and it's tough to watch it and feel like I don't have energy to make more videos. But I'm hanging in there. I'm doing okay otherwise.
Well, maybe when they get older, they can help you.
That would be really cool. Yeah, no way to tell what they'll be into at this
Well,
point, but uh,
most kids, I saw some list of the professions that kids like, and YouTuber was way up there towards the top. So maybe go, oh, my
mm,
dad's a YouTuber. Let me help him, grow up to be a YouTuber.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it'd be cool to um, if they're into it and uh, make them part of it. That would be cool.
Yeah,
But they're little right now, so
sure, it's going to be a while.
hard hard to imagine what life will be like when they're older.
So, as you know, if you are under 65 and have no health issues, you can't get COVID vaccines anymore. And so here is an example of why that's stupid. Vanity Nutrition, one of our moderators, one of my coworkers died last week from complications related to COVID. He was in his late 40s. Now, I don't know if he had comorbidities, but that's just one reason why everyone who at least wants to under 65 should be vaccinated. It's
Mhm.
crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy how I mean the contradictions are just right themselves, right? Like these people talked about, oh, I don't want to take vaccines away from anybody. I think vaccines should be a choice. Um, just trying to paint themselves as reasonable people as much as possible, but now they're making it harder and harder to get vaccines,
Yeah.
um, both in America and well, trying to worldwide with their RFK Jr.'s Gavi decision. But yeah, it's I mean, COVID is still any infectious disease, like COVID, flu, that we vaccinate to prevent can be an issue for people. It can cause unexpected uh, health emergencies. It can cause unexpected death. Excuse me. People should be able to protect themselves against it, and vaccines are the easiest way to protect against it.
Here's someone who Environmental Coffee House moderates for you under Miss Blue Ocean.
Yes, yes, I know. Environmental Coffee House, great, great
Apparently,
channel.
she got her channel back. Apparently, she's was
Oh,
taken down a while ago. So good for you, Environmental
that's
Miss
great.
Blue Ocean. I want to show you where some people are from here, Dan. John is from the Twin Cities.
Nice.
One of our moderators is from the Oregon Coast Range.
Okay. My
Melinda's in
brother
North
lives out there.
Carolina. Dagfin is in Oslo, where it's 2 a.m.
Ooh,
Dagfin is always here at
wow.
2 a.m. Rita's in Idaho.
Oh, 96 Fahrenheit.
Iris's Luna is in Iowa, where Legionella has shown up.
Oh, really?
You probably know there was an outbreak in Harlem this summer, and we talked about it quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And they finally have cleaned out all the cooling towers that are responsible for that. Lise is in Columbus, Ohio. Angry Penguin is north of Toronto. Abdul Rahman is in Manhattan. Doreen is in
Mm-hmm.
Hartford, Connecticut. Six likes that Debunk the Funk is in the house. We have crossover fans, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Rainey is in eastern North Carolina. Will is in Changsha, China.
Wow.
Kang is in Chicago. Jan is in Finland, Tampere, Finland. We have people all over the place. Martha's in Charleston, South Carolina. Visto is in Sydney, Australia.
Mm.
Sometimes we have someone from Malaysia here. Let's see. Maybe Dan wants to weigh in on this. Martha had a Tdap today. What does acellular mean in acellular pertussis?
Yeah, so pertussis is a bacteria, and the bacterial cells are used to make some versions of the pertussis vaccine. But acellular means that it doesn't involve the cells, it just involves the toxin of the pertussis toxin, which is what causes disease in pertussis. And so your immune system reacts to the toxin, which makes for a safer vaccine in most cases. But you have to get more doses for it to be as effective as the cellular version. So yeah, it just means no cells in the vaccine.
Less reactogenic, less side effects too,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
Tona is in Long Island. Welcome. Marge is in Amelia County, Virginia. We have a few scientists here. Dagfen, for example, got his brand new automated cell counter. This is going to save
Oh,
me so much work.
Olympus. Okay, interesting. Yeah, cell counting was. I remember counting using a hemocytometer
Yeah, I
in
did too.
undergrad and in grad school at a lab I rotated through, and then moved on to other labs where they had cell counters, and I was like, wow, this is amazing.
Well, in all the years of my lab, we grew HeLa cells in spinner cultures.
Mhm.
Every other day, 3 times a week, we would count them with hemocytometers
Yep.
because that's what we never had a cell counter just for that. It wasn't worth buying.
Hmm.
But I like to do that. Remember, you put the little glass slip on top and you
Hmm.
pipette on either side so you get a duplicate.
Oh
Count
yeah.
them. My little hand counter.
Yep. Trypan
Yeah,
blue stain.
yeah.
Yep.
Leo is in California, Mendocino. Pete is in London. Maureen is in Northeast Ohio. Cristela is. My question is, why does it suck here? Not on this live stream, of course, but
I know.
in the U.S. Well, that's a
Uh,
complicated question. That's what Dan tries to talk about every week.
Ask our politicians.
Melinda wants to know, what's your specialty?
So my training is in molecular biology. My training is, you know, I did a lot of biochemistry and RNA work in my grad school. I now work in industry, and on my YouTube channel, I dive deep into misinformation surrounding vaccines and biology related topics because I think it's fun to teach through showing wrong statements where someone says something that sounds right, but then you diving into why it's wrong, you can learn some cool things that you wouldn't otherwise know. So that's how I like to teach.
Yeah, you're a good teacher. I think you found something that's really a good niche to do, to explain, to debunk. I think it's great. I was thinking about it this morning because we never, when I started TWIV, I just wanted to explain the science, right? I was so naive. I didn't think you had to debunk anything,
Mm.
but clearly you do.
Yeah, it's important.
Carol, our favorite nephrologist from Bakersfield. Look at that, 102,
Oh man,
39C. Margot, Phoenix, 103.
wow.
Got some fans here. Leo, always great to have Dr. Dan. Elizabeth, thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Big apologies from Pete. Haven't watched your channel for months. So much good stuff to watch, so little time.
Oh, don't worry about it. I have plenty of content that I get behind on that I love to consume, but it happens.
Laura's in Washington, Pennsylvania.
Oh, cool. I'm also in Pennsylvania.
We have a few Pennsylvanians here. What is the Pfizer press release today? Are you aware of this? I haven't seen it.
I do not know.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, I didn't keep up with it. Pfizer responds to success of Operation Warp Speed and reaffirms transparency of COVID vaccine data. Okay, interesting. Let's see.
Hmm.
Um, I guess that this is responding to uh, Trump's tweet, I guess, on Project Warp Speed. He was like questioning whether or not it was actually good. I don't know the tweet. I remember the tweet
Hmm.
vaguely, but it was poorly worded, of course. So, and he also said something about like where's the data, Pfizer or something, even though
It's been
they
published.
published all their data.
Oh my God. They published the original trial and plus follow ups as well.
Yeah, uh-huh. And
I mean,
lots of other groups published their own research too. So,
see, this is the problem. You get someone says, where are the data? And then people believe them that there aren't any data because they don't bother to follow up on themselves on their own. Betty K's in Washington Heights. Estella, Florida, and thinking don't go in the same sentence.
mm,
Joseph is in southern Ontario. Peter's in Boulder, Colorado. Ay, ay, ay. I saw a comment. Where did it go? I wanted to highlight it. It's later. Okay. Southern Ontario. Yeah, Carol, you live in California. Hopefully, some of the other states will follow up with that vaccine recommendation. That's great. Christina from Texas. I think Texas and Florida are the most economically stressed states in the country. I read today in the New York
Oh,
Times.
oh,
John, thank you for your support of science communication, my contribution to another week of great content and guests. Welcome back, Dr. Wilson.
thank you, John.
Dr. Wilson, thank you for helping to spread data-driven truth.
I'm trying.
Peter is in Boulder, Colorado, 28C. Oh, here's yeah, the organization formerly known as CDC. Now Pete is calling it the Center for Disease Dissemination.
Oh, that's sad.
It's very sad.
Yeah,
I think it's MAGA is really make America Germy again.
that's
That
happening. Yeah.
it sure is. Mark is in San Jose, California. Logotic is in Chicago. Welcome, Dr. Wilson. Polka Dot Pup is in North Texas. Florida is going to learn the lesson again of why vaccines are important. What's that definition of insanity?
Yeah. I mean, we've been through this, right? Like we saw in the 2010s states that had more relaxed vaccine mandates for their public schools were more likely to have
Yeah.
outbreaks of measles.
Yep.
We're just going to see it again. So,
Credentialed crank. That's interesting, Tom. Interesting way to put it.
yeah.
Lillian, welcome, Dr. Wilson. Absolutely love Debunk the Funk.
Thank you.
Renatus is in Toronto. There you go. Glad to see we've brought out the big guns tonight. Oh, yeah. Give us your questions, folks.
I think I saw some
if you
by.
don't, I will, but you can. Elizabeth writes, I find doctors and nurses who come out as anti-vax and anti-science to be the most despicable and disgusting people. Yeah, I remember,
that tracks.
Dan, during COVID, a lot of healthcare workers got fired because they wouldn't get vaccinated. How crazy is that?
Yeah, it was like a minority of healthcare workers, but
Yes.
it wasn't a small number. So yeah, I don't know. There are some people who they just have these beliefs, and they can be very smart people and good at their job, but they just have these beliefs that
Yep.
go against the evidence.
Yep.
And it's unfortunate and can be tricky to navigate in conversations with them. But I mean, I look at people like that and take it as like, oh, I need to watch myself to make sure I'm not falling prey to like non-evidence based beliefs where I should follow evidence.
John writes, I wonder if the public can pressure insurance companies to cover vaccine recommendations from the new multi-state organizations. Also, there are medical societies that are, having vaccine recommendations which differ from CDC's. And so, as Paul Offit always says, the insurance companies would rather pay for a vaccine than for you to be in the ICU for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Health insurance companies are not going to like it if more kids are getting sent to the hospital and they have to pay for these measles stays.
Yeah. Privyet Elena, Reno, Nevada. So nice to see Dr. Wilson. I've been following his YouTube channel since he appeared on TWIV some time ago. Thank you for educating the public.
Nice.
Environmental. Robert F. Kennedy does not have a doctorate degree. He is a Juris Doctor from University of Virginia and a Master of Laws. He is, like everybody else in this administration, unqualified.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone in
Very
their
much so.
position is totally unqualified to be in it.
Hmm.
Are you horrified with Bhattacharya and Prasad and Makari as well?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, I knew about all of them before they took up this administration. They were all, you know, parroting this idea that, well, Prasad, not so much the Great Barrington Declaration per se, but Bhattacharya and Makari were very much on the Great
Yeah.
Barrington Declaration train, just saying like, oh, we need to protect the vulnerable and let the rest of society go on as normal. But protect the vulnerable how? And who are the vulnerable? They don't have practical answers to those questions and never did. So now they're like in charge and they feel like they have been persecuted this whole time because people were telling them they're wrong. And apparently that's the worst thing they can ever experience, is to be told they're wrong. And so, yeah, it's very frustrating to see Bhattacharya, especially, allowing all these NIH cuts to programs that uh, we need more basic research. And he's just going along with the political lines of saying, "Oh, we don't need this, we don't need that." Uh,
Dan, what pisses me off the most is any grant with diversity, equity, and inclusion in it is canned, as if this is a bad thing. This is crazy. This is America. That's what we do here.
hmm my friend in Florida, uh, he he just became a professor at a Florida university. He did chemical engineering for grad school and his postdocs, and uh, his grant got flagged because it said that he wanted to be a mentor to
Mhm.
minority students, and he himself is a minority. So, like,
There is
how?
no there is no reason to be against that. Just like there's no reason why we can't help other countries with USAID and
Hmm.
Gavi and there's one other I'm forgetting. It's just mean and uh, inhumane, essentially.
It is, yeah. I have a one video. I started outlining it the week that RFK Jr. announced his pull of funding from Gavi because it
Mm.
pissed me off so much. Um, and I still haven't had a chance to film it, but I mean, it's just really frustrating because you're we were already doing it. We were already giving money to Gavi so that children in the least served areas of the world can have basic protection against infectious diseases that are very likely to kill many of them if they're completely unprotected. And so we don't, if you want to make this argument of like America first, we need to get us healthy before we help other people. Okay,
Mm.
we can do both.
Yep, we
We
can.
like the wealth inequality in America looks way worse than most people think it is in their heads. Uh, there's no reason why we can't use a tiny fraction of that wealth to make sure that children in other parts of the world that don't have access to basic health care can get that basic health care. There's no reason why we can't do that. And he RFK Jr. is now getting to decide we're not going to help Gavi do that because of his blatantly wrong beliefs about DTP vaccines that he has repeated for years. And they're just wrong. It's all based on this research coming from Peter Abbey's group. I don't know how much you know about Peter Abbey's group, but they've done uh, research into the effects of DTP vaccines on children in places like Guinea-Bissau, and they claim that their work shows that DTP vaccines increase risk of death. But when you actually look at uh, their statistics, it's not significant. It's not statistically significant, the effects they're finding. And other groups that ask the same question and study similar groups of children find that that's not true, that it does not increase risks of death. And that same group, Dutch journalists have looked into this. That same group actually did a randomized controlled trial of trying to answer this question of, are DTP vaccines safe for children in these areas? And they never published the results. They never. This is what anti-vaxxers want. They want randomized controlled trials. They did this study and they never published the results. So Dutch journalists investigated and asked why it was never published. It turns out the results didn't support their preconceived notion that these DTP vaccines are bad. You can find the trial on PubMed, the clinicaltrials.gov. You can find it, but there are no results posted because it didn't support their notions.
Right.
And that is why RFK is choosing to pull funding from Gavi. That's his justification, and it's so frustrating.
So
It's so frustrating that
PEPFAR is the other program, President's Emergency Relief for AIDS, AIDS relief, which was subsequently restored, but they depend on USAID's infrastructure to work, and so they're screwed. And they already fired people. They already ran out of drugs. UNAID has done a projection of AIDS cases and deaths in the coming years because of these cuts. The numbers are going to go back to what they were in the 90s and 2000s. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Totally crazy.
Yeah, I predicted that. I released a video. It was in the days leading up to the final vote to confirm RFK Jr. And I said, this guy's an HIV/AIDS denier. He's going to support an agenda where HIV/AIDS medications are restricted or taken away from people who need them. And that's what's happening. I mean, my dad is originally from Eswatini, a tiny country in southern Africa, which is landlocked between South Africa and Mozambique. And it's the most AIDS-afflicted country in the world. And there are AIDS clinics that shut down overnight because of the cuts. People who need medication in order to keep their HIV counts down just suddenly don't have it.
Yep. I mean, I don't know. Someone should show RFK the results of lenacapavir studies, right? Where in certain studies, 100% prevention of acquisition of HIV infection, 100% in thousands of people. How can you say HIV doesn't cause AIDS? It's ridiculous. I mean,
it's crazy.
That's an antiviral that targets HIV, and it's keeping people healthy. In the control group, people get AIDS. It's crazy, totally crazy.
What I want someone to show RFK Jr. or ask him, going back to these challenging questions that I wish a reporter would ask him. Ask him who Christine Magyar is, because he wrote about her in his book, about where he has many chapters dedicated to HIV/AIDS denial. He wrote about her and called her a hero. But in reality, she was a mother who denied that HIV causes AIDS. She thought that AIDS medications were poison. She was part of this whole activist movement, and she herself was HIV positive, and she died of HIV/AIDS. But before she went, she had a daughter named Eliza who received HIV from her mom, because we know HIV can be passed vertically. And because this mother did not believe that HIV causes AIDS and was not taking HIV/AIDS medications herself, she didn't get those medications for her daughter. And before she died of HIV/AIDS, her daughter Eliza died at age 4 of HIV/AIDS. And RFK Jr. has the gall to write about this mom, this victim of disinformation, and call her a hero without saying any of her actual story of what happened to her in his book. And so I have no sympathy for RFK Jr. I have nothing but disdain for him. He is such an evil, stupid man who is doing nothing but harm. And I really, really wish reporters would just like live that and act accordingly. Ask him the hard hitting questions. Yeah, it's the brainworm thing is funny. I get it, but he's he's a monster. Like it's not acceptable.
Yet his family was vaccinated against COVID.
Yeah, yeah.
So
It's completely it's evil. It's evil.
thank you, SRR, for your support of science communication. Frank is in Houston. Oh, yes. We have 194 people and 117 likes. Hit the like button, folks. Maybe we can attract some people over here while we are running. Uh, Markle is wherever is at 62F.
Forgot to say
Dr.
where he's
Wilson
from.
is spot on who gets it hardest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great to have Dr. D here. Totally agree. The most marginalized folks always pay the highest price for this lunacy.
Hmm.
Mike is from Burien, Washington. Welcome. Peter writes, as somebody on the spectrum, RFK Jr. makes me irate.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Remember he was going to make an autism registry?
Oh God. Yeah. What? Why? That's so
You know,
that's very concerning.
you know, there are actually some people who say he's okay because he wants to address chronic diseases, but he's not addressing chronic diseases. He has this theory that vaccines cause chronic diseases, and all he wants to do is withdraw them. He's not addressing anything about chronic disease.
Hmm. Yeah, they're saying, hey guys, look over here. We're taking red dyes out of foods, which isn't going to do shit. And then at the same time, not saying a peep when Trump rolls back FDA regulations and EPA regulations um, about emissions. So now corporations are able to pollute and dump heavy metal toxins, which they are apparently afraid of, and forever chemicals, which they are definitely afraid of, into the environment without restriction. And that's going to increase exposure to people. Like
Yep.
they're it's how are you silent on that if you claim to care about people swimming in a quote toxic soup? That's what
Yeah.
RFK and these people always say.
And the White House supports this. It's, oh, he's doing good things. He's going to make America healthy. It's not doing any good things
No.
at all. Have you? Mark says it would be great to have a scientist present clearly to the public what is known about autism complex causes. Have you ever addressed autism, Dan, on your program?
Yeah, it's funny. In my first few videos, this was back in 2020, I said I'm not even going to entertain the idea that vaccines cause autism. Uh, that's a dated and long debunked claim. But now it's of course coming back into the mainstream, so I have to talk about it. But yeah, I've addressed it, um, and I even talked to Anders Hvid, uh, an epidemiologist from Denmark,
Hmm.
about his paper uh, investigating MMR links with autism in Denmark,
Right.
uh, and which of course showed no link, and also showed no link among uh, albeit small population of children who had no record of vaccination by age 1. So no vaccines. Children with no vaccines had no different autism rates than
Hmm.
kids with vaccines. Um,
Oh, there's no
but
question.
but yeah, the as far as the cause, I mean, excuse me, there's actually a really good podcast episode of Science Versus about what's causing the increased rise in autism.
Hmm.
And the answer is it's pretty simple. It's just that the definition has been widely expanded in recent decades because we understand the spectrum of the disorder way better than we used to. I mean, many decades ago, doctors would just look for very obvious visual signs like hand flapping, um, nonverbal, those kinds of very extreme, obvious visual signs to diagnose autism. And now uh, things like being completely normal verbally can be included in in an autism spectrum. So it's very much expanded, and there's research looking at uh, the rates of debilitating autism. That's not what they called it. They had a name for basically like debilitating and non-debilitating autism. I can't remember the exact words for it, but the point is the rates of debilitating autism, which is what RFK Jr. fixates on and calls an epidemic, calls those people who will never pay taxes or have a job or whatever. Um, those rates actually have barely gone up, arguably have gone down since 2000. But the rates of like functional autism uh, have gone way up because we're more inclusive in the criteria. We're including all of these cases where people have much more nuanced and much more subtle behaviors or communication styles uh, that can fall under the autism spectrum uh, diagnosis. So that's
Hmm.
really all it is when you look at causes, because they go through like, oh, are people having kids later in life? You know, kids
Yeah.
born to older mothers might be more likely to have autism, but that doesn't explain the big increase. Is it microplastics? Not really a good link there. Um, is it other environmental factors? But as far as a cause, for the increase, it's just diagnostics, and for a biological cause, it's mostly genetic. Twin studies, family studies have all shown that there is a very strong genetic link
Yep.
for autism, and that it happens mainly in utero. Autism basically uh, happens depending on what happen occurs depending on what happens in utero, not after birth.
There was a guest essay in the New York Times a while ago by someone who helped restructure the definitions of autism. He said, yeah, that the reason it's so many more cases is because the definition has been expanded, as you say. And
Hmm.
this guy was involved in it. And of course, no reaction whatsoever. Right.
Hmm. Yeah, actually, you might uh, one of the autism researchers, you might be able to get her on Twiv
Mm.
or a Twix variant. Her name is Maureen Durkin, I believe.
Hmm.
She's at University of Madison, Wisconsin.
Writing it down.
Yeah, Maureen S. Durkin is the name.
Elizabeth writes, I think people vastly underestimate RFK's shamelessness. We need to find ways of making him irrelevant, like the states doing their own recommendations and sharing data.
Hmm.
Well, I mean, this administration is all about transferring power to the states, right? So,
Apparently so. Yeah.
Hazel writes about RFK. Maybe we should put a list of questions about vaccines and feed it to a reporter if we can't interview him directly. Yeah, reporters like to make up their own questions, right, Dan?
Uh, I imagine they um, get their inspiration from other sources, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Uh, I'm not impressed with whatever methods they're using.
John writes, Lex claimed he would have an expert on to counter RFK, but in the months passed with nothing. I'm guessing
Yep,
to appease his audience, he didn't. He
yep.
won't. I'm surprised he had me on, right, in 2021.
It was good.
I think it was a good episode. We went through virology, and he really didn't try and counter anything I said. I didn't say anything that was counterable. I said facts. But he did tell me before we went on, he said, don't call yourself an expert. People don't like that.
Yeah. Uh, I don't
I'm
understand that.
sorry. We
I
need
don't.
experts.
Yeah, I have the death of expertise on my shelf back there. Uh, you, we need experts, and we
Yep.
shouldn't be ashamed to call one person or another an expert if they're actually an expert.
Peter likes your painting there behind you.
Yes, David Goodsell.
Yep. I
Yep.
have a big Goodsill of Ebola at the incubator.
Hmm.
Ruben wants you to discuss what's lacking in Kevin McKernan's work. Have you
Ooh.
ever?
Oh yeah. I have a few videos on him. He's the guy who popularized this DNA and COVID vaccines
Uh,
uh, craze. A ton is lacking in his work. The guy doesn't know what he's doing in the lab. He just kind of hopes that his audience is going to believe him because he can have access to a lab and can put together some figures that average people can't understand. But basically, I mean, what the whole DNA and COVID vaccines saga is people say that there's too much. So there are regulations limiting how much residual impurities can be present in biologics, and
mm,
there's regulations limiting the amount of DNA that can be residual DNA that can be in vaccines. And the argument from Kevin McKernan and his crowd is that there's too much DNA. And the reasons why this is wrong is multifaceted. But first, they have to actually show that there's too much DNA, and they haven't done that. Um, Pharmaceutical companies, contractors, and health regulators all test. Um, they have assays to test how much DNA is present in the vaccines, and these assays go through qualification and verification processes that are rigorous and reviewed by lots of people to basically demonstrate that the assay is actually showing what you say it shows. So, like, is it accurately measuring DNA in whatever solutions or buffers they're using? Is it accurately measuring DNA from every part of the manufacturing process? Is it actually measuring DNA? Um, can it accurately measure unknown amounts of DNA when compared to a standard? It goes through all of these things, and what McKernan and his people have done is they've tried to do qPCR in order to demonstrate this, but their experiments do not actually demonstrate too much DNA. In the worst cases, his PCRs are just would completely fail by industry standards. Like, you wouldn't even consider the data valid because the
mm.
efficiency is way off. Um, and in the best case scenario, it worked, but their numbers don't actually show DNA above the limits. So what they do is they go to a method called qubit fluorometry. Have you heard of qubit, Vincent?
No, I have not.
It's a it's basically a little fluorometer
Mm.
where you dye the DNA in the samples, you let it sit at room temperature for a fixed amount of time to let the dye intercalate into the DNA, and then you measure your standards in the qubit, and then you measure your unknown. But it turns out that depending on what buffer you use, that can really affect your measurements.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, like I've seen this in cell counting. We talked about cell counting earlier. If you like suspend your cells in PBS um, and then count them versus suspending them in a different buffer, like say TextMax, uh, your counting can be wrong uh, by like 20% in PBS versus TextMax. Um, so it really matters. Like actually going through the process to verify again that your assay is showing what you say it shows. Uh, that's how you work out all these kinks. But they don't do that. So they use qubit fluorometry, and they say there's way too much DNA. But actually, another paper, which um, in my most recent video about this DNA contamination topic, I think I added it after the fact. I actually didn't see it until after I uploaded the video. But this group actually tested these qubit methods to verify whether or not the way they were doing it in these supposed too much DNA experiments actually works and is accurate. And they found no, it's not accurate because they were getting a lot of um, it's called matrix interference, where like the what your sample is dissolved in can affect how the dye intercalates into the DNA. It can affect um, how the fluorescence is read. It can affect all these things. And so, anyway, this group that did this work to actually validate and verify these claims found that if you do the experiment right and accurately, you don't have too much DNA. So, yeah, Kevin McKernan's work is just lacking in scientific rigor and carefulness.
Hmm. Well, this is typical for these people who are contrarians, right?
Hmm.
They depend, as you say, that people are not going to look it up as you have.
Yeah.
Lillian writes, I would love to see Dr. Wilson debunk videos on Facebook from Nicholas Holscher on of the McCulloch Foundation on mRNA vaccines. Do you know this person?
I have not heard Nicholas Holscher. I know
Okay.
McCullough, but I haven't heard of Nicholas Holscher. I'm going to
Okay.
get a Google tab open of him. Okay. Yeah, I'll check him out.
Marge wants to know if any large hospital corporations are requiring COVID vaccines. I don't know. Daniel stopped talking about it a while ago, Daniel Griffin.
Mm. Yeah, I don't know. Requiring. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like uh, requirements are going to be difficult now because updated vaccines are going to be way harder to get. So I don't know how requirements are going to even
Yeah.
work.
Yep. Frogstar loves Dr. Dan Wilson. Thank you for all your work, homie.
Thank you.
Susie is in Akron, Ohio, and Carrie is in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico.
Hmm. Nice. I've been there. Beautiful, beautiful beach.
SRR is in Paso Robles, and Truth or Dare are in La Jolla. Science and Self is from Charlotte, North Carolina.
I think I can do about 10 more minutes, and
Okay,
then I should get to helping with bedtime for my kids.
no problem. I will forge on
Okay.
after you. Let's see if we have more specific questions. Michelle is in Philadelphia. Very confusing to schedule COVID vaccines at CVS as Pennsylvania is one of the restricted states. Yeah, if you're under 65 and you don't have a comorbidity, you can't do it.
Yeah. Not without a prescription, I think.
Yeah. John watches every new Debunk the Funk video. I really like the compiled lexicon of research papers to address frequent misinformation tropes. Grant is in Red Deer, Alberta. Carol got her MS in nutrition, had to manually count nematodes. Wish I had an automated counter.
They're life-changing.
GSD, Jonathan in Leucadia, 22C. Town motto is keeping it funky. So Jonathan here is also at a biotech company.
Mm.
Dan. Dr. Arter says, Tony, do you think the incidence of Legionnaires in New York City is higher than the numbers? Daniel thinks it is, yes. I also think there are asymptomatic cases that don't get counted as well. Yeah. Les writes, our moderator Pertussis almost killed me. Anti-vaxxers spread it through their children.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad you're still here, Les.
Science and Self with Holly. Oh, you're in for a treat with the Pfizer press release. I'll have to read it. I didn't have a chance to do that today. Angry Penguin, what I don't understand. Here in Canada, most vaccines are free and widely available. I've been told, we had a letter on Twitter that these are specific groups of people who don't get vaccinated, like Mennonites and others.
Mm.
Okay, so it's not the general population.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, here's a link for the Trump response, the Pfizer response there.
Okay.
John is in Port Townsend, Washington. Jason is in Utah. When Trump's tweets are poorly worded, you know he probably wrote them.
Yeah.
Christina's from Hershey, Pennsylvania. There you go. There's another Pennsylvania.
Been to Hershey Park. Been to Hershey Park many times growing up. I love it there.
6 has a dedicated notebook for Dr. Dan's videos. I'm always taking notes and reading studies. Great stuff.
I'm glad you enjoy them.
Hans is in Ecuador. There you go. South America represented.
Mm.
Lucid Dreamers writes, wait, if you're under 65, you can't get COVID vaccines? If you don't have, there's a big list of illnesses that you could check. If you're healthy, nope. From birth all the way up to 65, you can't have a COVID vaccine if you're perfectly healthy. It's crazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you need a prescription, and I don't know if the rules are different by state, but yeah, it's very confusing now.
Your kids are going to be in that boat, right? And you're going to probably want to vaccinate them.
Oh yeah, they are already vaccinated for COVID.
Well, you're lucky because you got them in before this nonsense. Yeah, good.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah, my when my wife was pregnant with my second, my son, she got vaccinated for COVID and flu in her third trimester, as she should. And Then when he was born, he didn't get flu or COVID, but RSV was the only thing we couldn't protect against because
Right.
there was nothing available at the time. And they had Beyfortus was on the market at the time,
Uh-huh.
uh, but there were two doses
Mm-hmm.
for different weights, and my son was big, so when we went to the pediatrician, he was just too big to get the low dose, and they didn't have the high dose. So he went completely unprotected against RSV, and he got it, and we were in the hospital for 4 days. He's fine now, perfectly good. But I mean that there's an anecdote where it's like, you know,
Yeah.
we protected against everything we could, and then the one thing we couldn't protect
Right.
against, he ended up, is the thing that
Yeah.
um, ended up being scary for us.
Dr. Bro, Shropshire, thank you for joining us from Birmingham, Alabama. Carol says, thanks to the Bill and Melinda Gates who donated 1.6 billion to Gavi, as well as EU member states. So yeah, trying to make up for the US. It's good.
Yeah, yeah. The silver lining is Gavi still is able to function. It just is
Yeah.
unfortunate that the U.S. took some of that ability away.
This is an interesting. People have brought this up before. As anti-vax as RFK is, I bet his dogs have rabies vaccines. People are not anti-vax about their pets, you know?
Some are, some people
Really?
are, some people
Really?
are. Yeah.
Oh man, it's crazy. Ravenna, thank you for your contribution to science communication. Really appreciate it. Patricia says, I kind of disagree with continuing to try and argue with RFK Jr. With respect, it seems somewhat a waste of time. I think we should focus on setting up public health consortia like out west. What do you
Mm.
think about that, Dan? Should we let him off the hook?
No, I mean, so here's the thing: like he's in power. He's in a position of power. Um, we can't let his statements go unopposed. There have to be people who speak up and speak out against
Yeah.
blatantly wrong things. So I know it can feel like banging your head against the wall, arguing with RFK Jr. and his supporters, but we need to. We someone has to do it. Uh, there need to be people who are willing and able to engage with these people, which I'm going to do actually in New York City in 10 days.
What are you going to be doing?
So I'm doing a live event.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the story is this event organizer asked me and another YouTube science communicator, Professor Dave, to do a live event. And it was originally scheduled to go to South Carolina, Charleston, but then that got canceled and uh, postponed, location switched to New York City. Um, so we're like, okay, we'll do this live event, and then the organizer was looking for anti-vaxxers to debate us on a
Mm-hmm.
stage. I didn't think he was going to find anybody because anti-vaxxers usually don't um, do this kind of thing, but he somehow found two people who are willing to do it, and
Mm.
it's two actually prominent anti-vaxxers who I um, I'm not happy about being on stage with, but I will do my best to embarrass them. That's going to be because I think having these discussions with people, having these discussions with anti-vaxxers, you kind of have to know your audience, and you also have to know. By know your audience, I mean you have to know who you're talking to. And if it's someone who is like these two people we're going to be debating, who um, just have zero regard for evidence and also zero respect for people who suffer from disease, then I think there's a certain approach to take with them, and it should be
Yeah.
to demonstrate to the audience, to the people watching that they don't know what they're talking about and that they are not good people. Um, if you're talking to an anti-vaxxer who might just be a little confused, heard something on a podcast and doesn't know what they're really talking about, then I would be much nicer to
Mm.
that person. But um, yeah, these two individuals, um, that's my goal, to demonstrate to the audience, to the people watching, to people who might be on the fence or not decided, that one side knows what they're talking about and the other side does not. So
That'd
yeah,
be great.
I'll be in New York City. If I have time, I might try to come to the incubator
Yeah, you
if
should.
if if available.
Yeah, sure. And good luck. I think you'll be fine. You've got all the facts,
Yeah,
you've read the papers. I have no problem with you
yeah,
doing that. All right, one more question and I'll let you go, okay?
yeah.
For Dr. Dan, what microbiology work fascinates you? Your favorite study subject?
Ooh, my favorite. Mm. I always enjoy the papers I enjoy the most reading are uh, cutting edge cancer treatments.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was just reading the other week. I was reading a paper about armored CAR T cells, which basically are very directed chimeric antigen receptor cells. So basically, like T cells that you take from the patient, you modify them, train them to attack cancer cells. And this paper was looking at using different promoters to
Mm,
like fine tune their response, because the issue is the tumor microenvironment is very immunosuppressive. It's very it's immunosuppressive and immunoevasive. It's able to get away from the immune system. So they were looking at different promoters that could uh, drive expression of different uh, cytokines uh, in these tumor microenvironments more efficiently. And I thought it was just really fascinating, and it always gives me hope that these treatments are going to get better and better, and we're going to be able to make cancer less and less of a um, scary thing in the future. So I always
cool.
enjoy reading those papers the most.
So, what's the date of the live debate? People are asking.
So it's September 13th. It's in the Bronx in New York City. Um, the organizer is Pangburn is his last name. So Pang dash Burn. Uh, if you, I think that his website's pangburn.com.
Hmm.
So yeah, you can find information about it there. Um, and yeah, I didn't really expect to be getting into this kind of live show when I agreed to it, but here we are, and I'll do my best.
And it's going to be live streamed. Is that right?
I believe there are live stream tickets, and then it's also going to be up for viewing afterwards.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
Great. Good luck.
thank you.
And thanks for joining us tonight, Dan Wilson from Debunk the Funk. Go check out his website on YouTube. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks so much, Vincent. Thanks to everybody. Have a good night.
Bye bye. All right, folks. I'm gonna keep going for the rest of the hour. Um, so there's still some comments here, quite a few. A lot of them are for Dan, which we can't do anymore. So the question is, here's a question for you. Last week you were great at answering questions. Do you want me to chat with you, or do you want a mini lecture? That would be virus attachment and entry part 1. So I'm going to watch for some answers and decide. I can not do that, and I could keep answering questions and chatting with you, or we could do a mini lecture. I have a feeling you're going to want a mini lecture, but well, you can tell me. You can tell me what you want to do. Of course, I have to find it first. Lecture. lecture. People don't want to hear me. All right, where is it? Today is the 3rd. I had it queued up for last week, which would have been August. All right. Melinda wants his questions answered. So let's see. I will do a mini lecture. Okay. Let me find it. I did. Here it is. I got it. Attachment and entry. All right. We'll do this. I'm surprised that I hadn't done this before, because it's way at the beginning of the course, right? Attachment and entry, how viruses attach to cells and get in. As you know, viruses are obligate intracellular parasites. What does that mean? They have to get inside of a cell in order to reproduce, to make more virus particles. They have no choice. They can't do it outside of a cell. Bacteria, many bacteria can need to go in cells as well, but most do not. Most bacteria are able to reproduce extracellularly. So viruses have to get in, yet the problem is they're too big to simply diffuse across the plasma membrane. So what has to happen? Well, they bind to receptors on the cell surface. So here's a picture of a cell, and here is a virus particle binding to a receptor and being taken in to the cell. So cells are always binding things that they need to take up, various proteins and nutrients. And so there's a whole machinery for cells to take up materials into them. And viruses, of course, simply piggyback onto those pathways and get in on their own. So this is a random event. So virus infected cells make lots of particles, right? Lots and lots of particles. And they just randomly float around and bump into other cells. So you have one step, they're moving around fluids, bumping into cells. And if that cell happens to have a receptor, then the virus will attach to it. If not, it's just going to keep on moving around. And that's why so many virus particles never do anything, because they don't hit the right cell. So they bind a receptor, sometimes more than one, and then the genome gets put inside of the cell, where then it can start a reproductive cycle, right? These receptors, these cellular receptors, don't exist, of course, for viruses. They have cellular functions, but they are essential for the reproduction of all viruses except those of fungi. So fungal viruses exist, of course they do, but these viruses never leave the cell. They stay inside the cell, they divide, and then when the fungus divides, they move with them. So they don't need a receptor. And plant viruses don't need receptors either. They enter cells typically by some kind of mechanical damage or insects delivering them. Now, this whole field of receptors is a relatively recent field. In 1985, well, that's not recent anymore, right? It's a long time ago. In 1985, only one cell receptor was known, which was sialic acid for influenza viruses. But this has changed a lot because we have incredible technologies for identifying receptors, right? We have recombinant DNA, so we can identify genes and clone them and study them. We have monoclonal antibodies that we can identify that are directed against receptors on the cell surface. We have what's known as flow cytometry, where you can put cells through a very thin tube and select out cells that you want based on what's on the surface of them. We have gene sequencing that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Now you're all experts on gene sequencing. And that's a relatively new technology, which we need for identifying receptors. And then we have ways to get rid of receptors in cells so that we could say, all right, we think this is a receptor for a virus. How can we prove it? You could knock out the gene, or you could knock down the mRNA using siRNA or CRISPR-Cas9. So these are all the enabling technologies that allow us to identify cell receptors for viruses. So what are the criteria? How do you prove that a protein is a cell receptor? First, you should show that it binds the virus particle. So here we have a picture of the CD4 molecule binding the glycoprotein of HIV-1. You can, if you make an antibody to the receptor, you show that it blocks infection. That's great. That's a good one. If you have the gene for the receptor, you show that if you put it into cells that don't have the receptor, it now confers susceptibility to the virus infection. And that's hard because sometimes if you need two receptors, you may only have one. And that's not going to work, right? And finally, disrupting the receptor gene will block infection. So ideally, all of these should be fulfilled. And many papers these days do that. Now, we published among the first cell receptors for viruses identified many, many years ago in the 80s, the late 80s. And that was the poliovirus receptor. And all we did was identify the gene and show that it confers susceptibility to cells. We didn't do any of this, but it's because it was early days and we didn't have these technologies. Actually, we had a monoclonal antibody against the receptor and showed that it blocked infection. So it was okay. Here's a great illustration of how you can identify a receptor for a virus. And this occurred early during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is showing that ACE2, the cell protein known as ACE2, is a receptor for SARS-CoV-2. All right. So ACE2 had already been known to be a receptor for other coronaviruses. And so what was done was simply to take ACE2 and ask, can it be a receptor for SARS-CoV-2? So what they did is they took HeLa cells that don't make ACE2, and they introduced DNA encoding ACE2 and made now HeLa cells that produce ACE2, okay? And so here are a series of fluorescent images that show that, in fact, ACE2 is the receptor for SARS-CoV-2. So what we do is we have HeLa cells that are producing human ACE2, and we're going to infect them with SARS-CoV-2. And let's go to the bottom first, the control experiment. These are just plain HeLa cells without ACE2. The first column is it's stained with a dye called DAPI, which stains the nucleus, so you can see that you have cells there. The second panel, the second column, is stained with an antibody to ACE2, and those antibodies are going to glow green. So you can see these HeLa cells don't make ACE2. The third column, we're staining with an antibody to the viral nucleoprotein. It's just going to stain red, and you can see these cells are not infected. And the merge, you combine the first, the second, and third columns, and you see there's no color. So HeLa cells do not make ACE2, and they cannot be infected with SARS-CoV-2. Now we go to the top, and here we have HeLa cells that we've engineered to make ACE2, and you can see they have ACE2 on the cell surface, the green. And in the third column, they are infected. They are making nucleoprotein after infection. And the merge shows that the green cells are the same as the red cells. Whenever there's a red cell, it's also green. There's no red without green. So there's no infection without ACE2. So this shows that ACE2 is a receptor for SARS-CoV-2. Of course, you could also measure virus produced from these cells and do a plaque assay, for example. The second row are HeLa cells making bat ACE2. And you can see that this virus, SARS-CoV-2, binds to this bat ACE2. And the third row is or HeLa cells that are making murine or mouse ACE2. Okay. And these are making mouse ACE2 by the green stain, but they are not infectable. And so we knew from early days that mice may not be a model for SARS-CoV-2 infection. We made them a model either by making transgenic mice that produce human ACE2 or by changing just 2 amino acids in the spike glycoprotein of SARS-CoV-2, and that enabled it to infect cells producing mouse ACE2. So anyway, this is a beautiful example of how you can identify a receptor. Of course, it was already known that ACE2 would be a candidate, right? If you don't have any idea what the receptor is, then it's a lot harder, but it can be done. Cell receptors come in all different shapes and sizes. You know, the plasma membrane of a cell, the outer membrane, right? It's a lipid bilayer. It's embedded with proteins, as you can see in this top image here. And these are typically glycoproteins. They have sugars attached to them. And some of these are receptors for viruses. And on the bottom, we have a little panel of cell receptors for viruses. You can see molecules like heparan sulfate proteoglycan, sialic acid, and a ganglioside. These are sugar and lipid moieties that serve as virus attachment receptors for herpes simplex, influenza virus, and SV40. And then a variety of proteinaceous molecules, proteins, cell surface proteins, that are receptors for different viruses. And you can see here's the poliovirus receptor, which was identified in my laboratory. And we have HIV, the 2 receptors for HIV. And again, all of these have cellular functions. They do not exist to let viruses in. It just so happens that virus selection has enabled viruses to attach to these proteins. Sometimes different viruses can bind the same receptor. So here we have an example of adenovirus and Coxsackie virus that utilize or bind to a common receptor, and pseudorabies virus binds the same receptor as human poliovirus. So Coxsackie virus, we sometimes have a listener from Coxsackie, New York. There it is, exit 21B on the New York State Thruway. The virus is named after that town. And viruses of the same family can bind different receptors. So there are 3 different receptors for rhinoviruses. There are 16 different receptors for retroviruses. And the third complication is that one virus may bind multiple receptors. Here's a herpes simplex virus 1, which can bind multiple receptors using multiple surface glycoproteins. And you may ask, what's the reason for this? Probably to enable the virus to infect different tissues. Now, first question we'll address is, how do virus particles attach to cell receptors? So here we have 2 examples, poliovirus and rhinovirus. These are viruses that are built with icosahedral symmetry, and we've talked about what that means in a mini lecture, right? And for poliovirus, there is a groove in the surface of the particle, and it's there that the receptor binds. So here is a side view in a cartoon way, showing this little groove. There's poliovirus in blue or purple, and there's a groove around what we call the 5-fold axis of symmetry, and the receptor is fitting right into there. Now, rhinovirus, type 2 shown here, has the same groove as polio, but the receptor for rhinovirus 2 does not bind in the groove. It sits on a plateau at the 5-fold axis of symmetry. So the receptors in both panels are shown in gray. As you can see, distinct modes of interactions of the receptor with the virus particles. Now, adenovirus does it slightly differently. Adenovirus particles have these protrusions at each 5-fold axis that are called the fiber protein, right? This is an extended alpha helix with a knob at the end, and the knob engages the cell receptor, which is the CAR molecule, Coxsackie adenovirus receptor. And here is a cartoon of the fiber molecule interacting with the CAR. The fiber is a trimer, 3 copies of the protein, And you can see the CAR molecule in light blue below it. Now, envelope viruses have another way of attaching to cell receptors. Envelope viruses like influenza virus that have a membrane, the membrane usually has in it a glycoprotein, what we have learned to call spike from the COVID pandemic, right? So influenza virus has a spike in it as well. It's the hemagglutinin protein. And that is the protein that attaches to the cell receptor. The cell receptor for influenza viruses is a small sugar known as sialic acid. And the sialic acid binds in a pocket at the tip of the HA. So here in the middle is the three-dimensional protein structure of the HA. And at the very top, there is a groove. Looking down on the groove here on the right, and the sialic acid is binding in that groove. Get your groove on, folks. Put sialic acid in. It's a little green molecule there. So viruses with membranes that have spike proteins, the spike proteins are what engage the cell receptors. Now let's dive a little deeper into influenza virus. This is good common knowledge to have. So sialic acid is that sugar that I just showed you binds to the hemagglutinin. That's how influenza viruses bind to cells and get in. Now, what is sialic acid? It is the last sugar in a chain of sugars attached to a protein. So if we have a transmembrane glycoprotein here, the sugars are attached in chains, and sialic acid is always the last sugar in this chain. And influenza virus will bind to sialic acid. But what is sialic acid? Well, it is a typical 6-carbon sugar. You can see the ring here, and it has side chains on it as well. So that's sialic acid. And in a chain of sugars, it would be attached to another one, and here it's shown as galactose. And there are many different kinds of sialic acid, but there are two main ones that are receptors for influenza viruses. And they're shown here labeled alpha-2,3 or alpha-2,6. And the influenza viruses that infect birds, avian influenza viruses, only bind to alpha-2,3 linked sialic acid. So what does that mean, linked? So the linkage between sialic acid and the next sugar is very important for determining what influenza viruses will bind to it. And alpha-2,3 linked means simply that the number 2 and the number 3 carbons are linked via this oxygen. That's an alpha-2,3 linkage. And the avian influenza viruses prefer to bind that. If you want to infect a human, though, you need to bind to an alpha-2,6 linked sialic acid. Again, the number 2 and the number 6 carbon are linked via this oxygen. And those are human influenza viruses. Now, if you're a avian influenza virus and you are going to infect people, you're going to have to change your HA, and sometimes it's just one amino acid, so that the HA will now recognize alpha-2,6 linked sialic acids. So that's why we worry about avian H5N1 influenza virus, because we're worried that it's going to change and be able to infect humans. Now, the first step would be being able to recognize alpha-2,6. And some of the viruses have actually the ability to do that, but that's not all you need. You need more than that, apparently. HIV attaches via its glycoprotein as well, which is a trimer in the virus membrane, and it's called SU, and it attaches to CD4, the primary receptor. And you can see here the CD4 molecule in this blow up on the right is poking into the bottom of the SU. So that's how this interaction occurs. So it's not a sugar like influenza virus. The HA binds to sialic acid. For this HIV glycoprotein binds to another protein on the cell surface, which is called CD4. And SARS-CoV-2, we should review also how it attaches to cells. And of course, SARS-CoV-2 are enveloped viruses with a spike protein in the membrane, and it's the spike that attaches to cell receptors and leads to uptake of the virus into the cell. And we're going to talk about that next time. But the spike protein is a very long protein, 1,273 amino acids. Right? The first mRNA vaccine was called 1273. And it consists of many domains, which are colored here. And they fold into this three-dimensional structure. So at the bottom is the part of the protein that would be stuck in the virus particle. And these different domains have different functions. But the one I want to point out is this green one, which is the receptor binding domain. And this on the right is the structure of the spike of SARS-CoV-2 bound to ACE2, its receptor. So you can see there's an interface between ACE2 and the receptor binding domain of the spike protein. And so these structures were solved early on in the pandemic, and so we could understand exactly how the particle attaches to cell receptors. And then as variants emerged, we found amino acid changes at this interface that were interfering with the ability of amino acids to bind. So many of the antibodies are directed against the spike at this interface to prevent attachment. And then those amino acids changed to allow the virus to attach and evade the antibodies. So that's why this kind of analysis is important. Next time, we're going to talk about virus entry into cells. So we've talked about attachment so far, but virus particles next have to get into cells, and there are a number of ways that they can do that. And I'm going to save that for next time because I'll go back to get some of your questions and talk about it then. All right, that's virus attachment, receptors and attachment, basically. All right. Yeah, this I saw earlier, this interesting comment from Jeff. One of the core problems is that the Democrats are horrible communicators. They have allowed the GOP to control it. They've controlled the narrative. And so they can blame the Democrats for everything, right? Everything that goes wrong, you hear the White House saying this is Biden's fault or Obama's fault. They control the narrative. The Democrats really need to be more aggressive, and they're not. They're not. Michelle, wonder if it would be helpful to blitz congressmen, senators, newsmen with a list of hard-hitting science questions. We talked about this slightly before with respect to journalists, right? But I mean, a judicious email to your representative is useful. You know, you could send one a month, one a week with a different topic and ask, hey, this decision to change the ACIP to people, these people have no expertise. Do something about it, right? I think it's a good idea. Bat Cat is in Winthrop, Maine. Kent, the cat guy, thank you for your contribution to science communication. Really appreciate it. Yeah, here's a good book. Vaccines Did Not Cause Rachel's Autism, My Journey as a Vaccine Scientist, Pediatrician, and Autism Dad by Peter Hotez. It's a good book. Well, experts such as yourself are necessary. The political world requires the Democrats to actually fight, and that includes using the bully pulpit, which they do poorly. Yes. Trump's EPA, writes Cheryl, reversed the ban on chloropyrifos. That is a known cause of neurological trauma, totally hypocritical. Pesticides in the environment are likely driving at least part of autism diagnoses. Well, all the environmental restraint is going to be reversed, right? Because it's not friendly to business. Tom is curious whether if in utero toxoplasmosis is an autism risk. I've never heard that. I don't know. It's a good question. Of course, Well, yeah, here's a journal article. Maternal toxoplasmosis and the risk of childhood autism. This is from BMC Pediatrics. We can suggest that a maternal toxoplasmosis infection could have a role. So it should be a toxoplasma infection. Toxoplasmosis is the disease. A toxoplasma infection could have a role in the development of childhood autism linked to mitochondrial and nuclear DNA impairment. So yes, Tom. Mm-hmm. Dr. Tanya writes, in our Mercury study at Tulane School of Public Health, we found no association between autism and mercury in fishermen and their families in 5 parishes. Great. Don't forget, RFK is supposed to appear before the Senate Finance Committee tomorrow. What is the point of education if not expertise? It's expertise, right? Of course it is. Doctors get educated and learn how to do procedures, and you want them to be an expert. You want the person doing your surgery to have done it many, many times. They're an expert. You want the pilot driving your plane, flying your plane to be an expert. You don't want the surgeon driving it or flying it. I mean, expertise is needed. To think it's not is ridiculous. And we have this administration characterizing experts as know-it-alls. Trump is famously saying, I don't need an expert. I can figure it out by my intuition. Good luck. Figure out where the gallbladder is once you cut the person open. Sure. Idiots. Really idiots. Yeah, this is a good question. 6 writes, reporters are possibly afraid of asking the hard questions in case Trump tweets about them and they lose their job, house, and credibility. Well, the press secretary won't even answer them. Or they'll say, how could you ask that of the president? You're insulting the president of the United States. Oh, F off. Answer the question. All right. So about RFK Jr. bashing, if you folks are tired of it, that's fine. I will not stop because with this population, you have to pour it on constantly to just reach a few. And I think that's part of the strategy, to keep emphasizing why what he's doing is wrong. If you just sit back and accept it, that's not going to work. So I'm sorry if you're tired of it, but I'm going to keep bashing. And so is Dan Wilson, and so are many other people. Sorry. Hello, Patricia from Massachusetts. Yeah, it's a bit late. We're almost done, but you can always watch the Dan part. He's very good. Dr. Bro, Shropshire, thank you for your support of science communication. Yes, we need experts, and scientists are part of the experts. Engineers, train drivers. I mean, they're all experts in what they do. Plumbers, electricians, not just people who go to college. How old is autism? Is it possible that such brain phenomena existed in Neanderthals? Very difficult to know. I mean, if we had identified a specific polymorphism in our DNA, then we could see if Neanderthals have it. But I understand that the first diagnoses occurred in the 1930s, and that is way before vaccines were widespread. And we only had smallpox and flu vaccines at that point. And then people will say, "Oh, but it's increased with increasing vaccination." Yeah, but that's a fake argument, because it was already there. That's the point before vaccines came about. And so anyway, but that's, there's a lot of contemporary studies that address this, and there is no role of vaccines in autism whatsoever. Well, Cheryl says ASD is a syndrome. It has many causes, undoubtedly exists in all species throughout time. Well, I don't know if undoubtedly is right. We know it may not have had the environmental causes back then, and the mutations may not have risen. We don't know. I think you have to be careful there. Been a lot of talk about dyes and glyphosate. Sorry. Dr. Andrea Love is recommended by John, who has also collaborated with Dr. Wilson. Another approach is Professor Dave, who had the autistic son of Rita Schuffler, a spokeswoman for RFK Jr., talk about his mother's abuse he experienced in treating his autism. Facebook is a cesspool of misinformation and AI slop. Yeah, I stopped visiting Facebook ages ago, although we still use it to promote our shows. Have to be there. Nature Nut 8 is in Winnie, Texas. Glad to have you here. Most health networks are not requiring COVID vaccines anymore. I asked earlier if anyone was doing that. Thalia 7, hello from the Philippines. You're welcome. You guys asked for Dr. Wilson, and we know each other, so he came on. It's great. I am exposed daily to viruses, Luna says, and vaccines have helped. A lot of, well, this is for Dan, I know, but I'm here. A lot of respectable scientists pour scorn on school closures. But everyone and their dog know that schools are incubators for infectious diseases. It was the right thing to do until we figured out the dangers that were involved and we got some vaccines. Because we now know that kids can get long COVID, right? Kids can die of COVID. And we didn't know at the time. So it was the right thing to do. Plus, they could bring the infections home to their parents, and then their parents couldn't work. So it would have a cascading effect. So I don't know. I'm sure Dan would say the same thing. But I think it was the right thing to do. And I know that not every country did it, but I think it was fine. But unfortunately, this is back. There's a backlash now of people who didn't like that oversight and now don't want any vaccines, unfortunately. Is anyone perfectly healthy? Of course not. But there's a list. It's a fallacious list. Everyone should be able to get a COVID vaccine who wants it. Under 65 without comorbidities, okay? It's crazy. Jason's getting his COVID vaccine in a dark alley by someone named Wendy. That's what we're doing to vaccines, right? We're going to make them black market. Yeah, That way people under 65 who are around can affect people who are at high risk. Yeah, it's a great idea. There's so many people who are anti-vax about their pets. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Too bad. RSV is very scary in babies. Yes, Paul Offit has talked about that. Oh, wow. A recent article, 40% of dog owners are rejecting the rabies vaccine. Oh, my gosh. I didn't know that. All right, Patricia, I understand your point, but I don't like the idea of moving on. You should be doing both, and I will do both. Sidebar, Professor Dave has a great biochemistry refresher course for free on YouTube. Yeah, so the debate should be interesting. Unfortunately, it's not. You're going to have to pay to get it live streamed, I guess, or maybe not. Is this streaming anywhere? Well, you have to listen to the link he sent and go visit that website and see how you can get on the stream. Maybe you just have to register and you don't have to pay for it. All right, we got 2 minutes left. Let's see if there is. So the New York City event is September 14th. Let's see if there's anyone else I have to thank here before we leave. Yeah, Vista, armored car T cells. Scientists have a sense of humor. They always have. They always will. All right, let's see if there's anyone who has donated that I should thank here. Lots of questions. Sorry. This video is saved, so if you came late, you can watch it for sure. Okay, folks, let me thank our moderators for tonight. Let's take Visto off of here and thank our moderators. Tom was here. Vanity Nutrition was here. Les was here. Barb Mac UK was here. Thank you so much for moderating. I know there were some moderations to be done. And thanks everyone for coming and hitting the like button. I appreciate it. We will be back next week. Next week is September 10th. We'll be back September 10th, 8 p.m. Eastern. If you had questions that weren't answered, bring them. We'll have a mini lecture. We'll do part 2 of virus attachment and entry. So thanks for coming, everyone. Hope you enjoyed Dr. Dan. Hope you enjoyed everything about this. It's your place to go for science. Thanks for being here, folks. See you next week. Until then, please be safe.